Game Pass and OpenAI are getting a little spicy. It's Friday, friends. It is Friday. It is September. There is a lot to talk about. There were comments related to Game Pass not being like a good thing for devs. There's OpenAI and Microsoft, and that egg is starting to crack, and we've got all sorts of details and all sorts of fun things. There are a boatload of questions this week. 16. I might maybe even more than 16 once I refresh this page, but there are a lot to talk about. Hopefully you all had a wonderful week. Let's just dive in because I want to get this show started, and that is why we're all here, or something like that. Anyways, the oddity between Microsoft and OpenAI is continuing to go different ways. Now, OpenAI is in the middle of a process of trying to make itself like a for-profit company by doing a bunch of cut movements on the table, if you will, a little three-card Monty to try to become a profitable entity while not being a fully profitable entity, while also doing other weird things. Anyways, Microsoft is sort of like, all right, we got to start figuring life out here. And they also announced this week Microsoft is working on their own internal large language models, trying to become more self-efficient, which realistically feels like too little too late. Maybe not too late. That might be the wrong way. And we'd have to think, considering that they've already put out like small models, that they've been working on big models, and now they're just really ready to start talking about it as all this stuff starts to hit the airways. Anyways, Microsoft, according to the information, is going to start buying AI from Anthropic, who you probably know for Claude and those various models. And so, yeah, that's like the first sort of, cracking of the egg, if you will, from a shot across the bow. But then we hear this, which made huge headlines this week, that Oracle and OpenAI signed a $300 billion cloud deal. Now, if you're Microsoft, you would have to think that they'd be a little perturbed, if you will, that they were not winning this deal. However, I suspect that Microsoft was very aware of this deal, and for reasons they backed out. And they're like, I don't think that's for us. And here's the real honest question is like, does OpenAI even have $300 billion? Like, where are they getting this money from? This is all speculative growth and continuation, which I guess in some capacity is all business, right? Continued growth and speculation and revenue will continue on as it has for whatever. But this is a huge deal, and Oracle's stock exploded, assuming that they can deliver on this. I'm assuming that this is going to be building out a whole bunch of data centers, and good for Oracle at the end of the day for landing this, assuming that it becomes profitable and actually OpenAI does pay it out. This is probably one of those things that's like $300 billion is the absolute max. The likelihood that they take in is probably something less than that along the way, assuming, certain metrics are met and everything else. But that is a huge deal. That is a huge deal. And so then you have that. And then the week has ended with this. This is the whole blog post, by the way, if you're on the video side. This is the entire thing. It's a very weird thing. First off, it's written by Microsoft corporate blog. So nobody taking the name of this. It's just OpenAI and Microsoft just saying, we are announcing that we will soon announce that we have announced a new deal. That is it. That is it. And it is very weird, very strange bedfellows, if you will, going on. Regardless of everything that is happening, the relationship has changed forever and permanently. And what we are waiting on now is the new OpenAI structure and what percentage is Microsoft going to own. This is going to be a very lucrative thing for Microsoft, right? They will eventually, I don't know if they'll eventually cash out, but they have a very tight relationship, not just from a corporate structure, but like the literal, infrastructure side of OpenAI continues and will forever, probably at least for a while, need Microsoft. Maybe once that $300 billion deal with OpenAI is done, like OpenAI will be like, hey, we could pull off Azure if we wanted or something. But that is the nature of the beast. And just very odd things. And you have Microsoft going, we're building our own stuff now. And so it's like, okay, you can't depend on OpenAI anymore, and you got to become a little bit more self-reliant. Of course, at the end of the day, Microsoft is shoving Copilot everywhere. There's a very good reasons for this, because nobody, at the end of the day, from the end user perspective, nobody cares about the underlying model. They care about the brand. That is what they know. Like, you don't buy an LLM, for lack of better terms. But you buy ChatGPT, you buy Copilot, you buy Claude, you buy, right? And so from Microsoft's perspective, it's the most important thing is to have that brand out there, which everything else underneath it can be swapped in and out at free will, if you will, for simplification at the end of the day. So this is like corporate chess at its finest. If you like this kind of, there are going to be some wonderful novels written about what is going on right now in the near future, and I cannot wait to read them because this is corporate chess and maneuvery, and there's clearly some backstabbing going on, and so it has all the great tellings of a good tale. So speaking of Microsoft and Copilot, interesting things if you want. So Microsoft is moving sales, service, and finance to the frontier with Microsoft 365 Copilot. This is their own blog post. What they're really doing is adding more features and functionality into Microsoft 365 Copilot rather than independent SKUs, which, hey, if you're paying for 365 Copilot, that's a good thing right at the end of the day, but it also probably indicates that Microsoft's Copilot, like other services that are also AI related, probably aren't selling as well as they'd want. And so they're making them more cost efficient or cheaper, if you will, at the end of the day. Also, the other big thing happening outside of the world of AI is that Microsoft has released 25H2 to the release preview channel, is what the blog post says. But if you scroll down a little bit on that post, you will find links, my friends, to the ISOs. So people love ISOs. I'm a big ISO fan. And so you can now grab these, which means that 25H2, the official announcement, which is usually an October thing, right around the corner. I'm still hoping that we're going to hear like a Windows 12 sort of thing here in the near future or something, or a Windows 2026, something like that. Like, hey, let's do this sort of mentality. But here we are, and Microsoft continues to do Microsoft things. So anyways, gaming news also jam-packed with big, gaudy headlines, if you will. So let's dive into the gaming news here. So if your car can become an Xbox, this is weird. But anyways, technically you can play xCloud on LG's automotive content platform, which, yeah, makes for great headlines. But let's be real here. We already know xCloud is a latency-sensitive product. Put it into a moving vehicle, and you just have a recipe that's not super great. Now, for certain games, I'm guessing it's probably fine. This is more like headline winning than I think functionality winning, if that makes sense. But whatever, your car is an Xbox. What would be hilarious is if they did those. Remember those Jeeps they had from the Call of Duty days? You could buy literally like a Modern Warfare Jeep, like an actual Jeep Wrangler. Imagine that now. They should redo that with one of these things in there, and then you can play Call of Duty in your Call of Duty if you follow my very simple brain logic there. Also, what appears to be uncovered in the xCloud code, it looks like we're going to be getting some new lower resolutions, or I should just say more resolutions probably at this point is probably the better way to be saying that here. 720 and 1080 HQ, but more importantly, I think most people are excited about 1440, and so we'll be looking for that coming to xCloud here. Maybe they announce it at the Japanese game show, which is coming up. I don't know why I snapped my fingers here in a few weeks. Maybe that's where they're going to start talking about this. But either way, that is coming. Now, some of the bigger headlines of the week for the gaming world was this. And so former Xbox VP says Game Pass creates weird inner tensions because a game's popularity can actually damage sales. The majority of the game adoption on Game Pass comes at the expense of retail revenue. And it's like, obviously. So here's my issue with this in particular. I'm not trying to defend Microsoft for Game Pass or everything else. So there are games that do not make sense to launch on Game Pass. They don't make sense. So Grand Theft Auto, unless Microsoft's willing to write a massive check, but like Grand Theft Auto 6 doesn't make sense to launch on Game Pass. I'd love it if it did, but it doesn't make sense financially to do that. Battlefield 6, same thing. Again, unless Microsoft is willing to write a check. Where Game Pass makes a lot of sense, if you are a smaller developer and you don't have Grand Theft Auto's budget, you don't have an EA budget, you don't have those massive, cash registers that can float you along until. Here's how the model works. Microsoft comes to you before you have launched your game and says, we will write you a check for some amount of money that has been negotiated. And if you're a big company, you're going to get a bigger check. If you're a small indie developer, you're going to get a smaller check. And then your game will be in Game Pass. Now, the bet, there's two bets that you're taking here. You are either A, guaranteed revenue upfront because you took that check from Microsoft and it's going right into your bank account to pay your bills and to keep you going and everything else, or making, generating you profit. However, the risk you're taking there is that your game comes out and then explodes in popularity, and then you did lose retail revenue. However, like, this is the risk reward of business. Do you want guaranteed income so you can, if it floats you along or whatever, if you need that money, you take it up front and then that's the risk you're taking? Or do you have like a lot of ambitions and believe that your game is better than what you will do from that check that Microsoft will write, and then you can launch and then you're fine, in quotations, but that's the risk. You're like, I'm turning down revenue to say make it when I actually sell the games, which is the traditional business model. This argument goes on to say that games that go into Game Pass need to be set up for like DLCs and microtransactions, and then it makes a lot of sense. But that's missing the whole entire point of this, is that Microsoft doesn't walk in there with a knife and says, look, we're putting your game on Game Pass and we're not paying you anything for it. Like, that's not how this works. And so that's where the frustration comes in. It's like, yeah, there's weird intertensions, but that's up to the studio itself to make that decision. Now, this completely glosses over first party. Xbox studios don't get a choice because Xbox is funding them. So that is this is only studios who are not owned by Microsoft. They have a choice to make to be in Game Pass and to take that money. And if they take it, then that's the risk they're doing. And so at the end of the day, the game won't always permanently be in, well, I guess it depends. If they make they might say it's always permanently in Game Pass if they sign a contract that's worth more money. Like, this is business. I don't understand. The weird tension is up to the developer. Now, this is, in my opinion, a wonderful thing, because here's small studios who are building games, which we know that launching a game is either feast or famine. And you don't hear complaints from any company that launched a game that didn't do well, took the Game Pass money, and actually made more money than they would have selling it independently. Like, you don't hear those arguments. So there's two sides to all of this, and the side of like, hey, Game Pass is stealing money from independent studios. It's like the narrative that took off, and then Microsoft sitting there going like, we paid them money for this, right? They could have turned it down and said no. Like, that's how this works. So yeah, interesting stuff. It's fun. It's fun to watch this and just the yin and yang of it. But I guarantee you that any of those games that launched on Game Pass that didn't do well and still took the check aren't complaining. So that's the risk you take. That's business in itself. Yeah. Okay. Anyways, still playing Helldivers, by the way. Helldivers is really, really fun. It took me a while to make it click. I'm still lacking some knowledge about some of the end, like what's the end game here. I know it's try to win the war sort of mentality, and you do these missions and all that, but like, what am I building up to? I'm still trying to figure that out. But getting all the weapons, it's fun. It's definitely better to play with a group of friends, if you will, rather than trying to play independently, and that's sort of the whole thing. And whatever, it's fun. It is fun. And so the real story here is that I probably haven't played Call of Duty in a month. Yeah, we're coming up on a month. When you consider Battlefield's beta and Helldivers, I probably haven't played Call of Duty in a month. Which is, for me, someone's gonna be like, "Well, Brad, that's not that big of a deal," and it's like, for me, it is. Like, that's how it is. I don't know. That's where we're at. So, all right, we have a bunch of questions in the week, and see me scrolling here on the screen. I will try not to. I have to be careful scrolling. I know I say this every time, but one time I did the microphone incorrectly with my scroll wheel, and it completely screwed up the podcast. And so we're trying not to do that. On to the questions. Always my favorite part. Let's rock and roll, my friends. Darkson says, "Hi Brad, now that there is absolutely no fee, have you considered putting Stardock apps in the Microsoft Store? Are there any drawbacks to contributing your software to the Microsoft Store?" So I need to look into this further, which I know I've said before, but I don't think so. The no fees is for independent developers. I don't know where Stardock falls in that category of independent developers. Like, we sell premium products, we make money, and we have a business. And so are we like, it's not a one-man shop. And so I believe there's still fees for the larger publishers of the world, potentially. I need to look into it. Regardless of that aside, are there any drawbacks? Yeah, there's absolutely drawbacks. First off, I don't know enough about the Microsoft Store because Stardock has built For better or for worse, Stardock has its complete stack. And I mean, we build the software, we have the authentication server, we encrypt our own keys, we have the whole activation platform resides within the Stardock's own universe. We don't use any third-party activation services. So the first thing is like I would need to get our apps into there. And then I got to look at their licensing model, because Microsoft typically defaults to 5 devices, which our products do support up to 5 devices, but they're different SKUs. And so to keep prices low, we have a single SKU and a 5-pack. So we might only be able to do 5 packs if Microsoft is going to force our products to be, installed on 5 devices if we have to use their entire stack. This is where it gets complicated, because then we also have to support things. As an example, we sell things on Steam. We have to use Steam activation, which it loops around and uses our own activation, but it's complex, which means we have to maintain that. And so the question becomes would we get enough exposure on the Microsoft Store to justify it? It's a good question, and I don't know the answer to that yet. I don't. Realistically, what I would like to do is just be able to put our trials over there, and then that would probably make it pretty easy if we could do something like that. So, and then it would we need to complete the transaction outside the Microsoft Store. I know the fees or whatever, but we have a whole infrastructure in place to do this. And so when everyone's like, just put it in the Microsoft Store. And it's like, well, do we have to use their payment platforms? Do we have to use all their processes? Do we have to use their activations? Where does the file store? How are we going to update that file programmatically? I'm sure all these things can be answered, but this is overhead to putting an app on a store, which goes back sort of like that Xbox. It's a business decision question. Then are we going to make enough money to do all that? The other thing too is then you play the SEO game of, is the Microsoft Store going to outrank our own app pages we have built and curated and are in complete control of, and push people to the Microsoft Store? You could see how it's not always just a simple just put it up there. It's super easy. This is, I run the operation, so these are the questions that we need to evaluate before we do the whole thing. All right, JPJG86 says, have you completed Indiana Jones yet? Nope. Helldivers has got me locked. Have you started the expansion? I am not. So the expansion, I believe, is premium, and I'm most likely not going to be buying it. Mr. DB Cross says, we also heard about new games coming to X. We always hear about new games coming to Xbox. How can we never hear about the hot new native apps coming to Windows? There's not. I mean, everything's on the web now. So we always hear about the hot new web apps, the AI stuff. There is some of the AI apps. The next big thing that'll be coming to Windows that we'll be curious to see are actually more of the agents that can interact with Windows, which this is in the back of my brain's why would they launch this as Windows 7? The agentic OS should be Windows 12, in my opinion. So I'd be more on the lookout for agents than anything else at this point. Ismail says, with the rumors that the PS6 might be a handheld console, are console wars officially over? Will another company, perhaps Epic or Steam, throw their hat into the ring and make a traditional console now that all 3 major players are done with it? Here's the thing. The console wars never existed. It's always been a more of a fanboy thing. Both Microsoft, Xbox, Sony, Nintendo, all these guys have their own businesses at the end of the day. Now, the tribalism that comes with it is certainly fandom and helps potentially sell more consoles. So maybe it isn't always on the consumer side, but yeah, I don't want to say the console wars are dead, because I think they've just melted away. And that's the reality. Now, Steam does have their big picture mode and Steam Box. And I don't foresee Epic doing this personally. I think the PC is the ultimate endpoint. And to sit here and say, wow, should we spin up a new gaming console that's not a PC at its core, seems like an extremely risky proposition for realistically any company at this point. Ed Tierney says, saw another batch of custom controllers from Xbox release. Do you collect Xbox controllers as a side hobby to gaming? There are a lot of controllers that are very cool looking, but I've never bought them. I'm always just black and white guy. I do have a couple of elites along the way, but yeah, the problem is there's so many of them, and the new what I keep thinking is chopped carbon, but the Breaker series also looks really good. But to me, they're just controllers, so I don't put them up on the shelf. Now, if you said, do you build and collect keyboards? That answer would be yes. So it's not that I would think collecting controllers is dumb, because I totally get it. I have tons of keyboards, so it's not quite a controller, but the keyboards I totally do. So, Mr. PKI says, Microsoft announced an RTO for the main Redmond campus. Do you think we will see another wave of departures? I think we do. So Microsoft has mandated, I believe it's starting in February, everybody must be in an office who is within something like 50 miles of the Seattle office, and maybe other offices too. 3 days in the office. They say it's not a layoff or headcount reduction thing, but we all know that's how this works, right? Somebody will retire, some people will look for other jobs that are more flexible or things like that. That is absolutely a thing. And I gotta scratch my foot. I can't. I'm not editing. I'm not editing. There we go. It's just if I duck away while doing that, then it looks real weird. Anyways, my foot was like killing me. It's kept trying to scratch it. Whatever. We are moving on. Dark Toolbelt Plays Xbox says, do you see Microsoft releasing 2 consoles, the cheaper one being on par with the Xbox Series S, as I honestly thought the Series S was going to be the minimum? Ooh, it's a good question. I don't think Microsoft is going to do a dual console next time. I don't think so. I think they've learned, especially from the manufacturing side of it. I think they are not going to do it. They tried their best to have like one console core, if you will, for the S and X, and they did a pretty good job. But I suspect that they're just going to have one console to rule them all. Now, the one thing I don't think they're going to try to do, I don't think they're going to try to go crazy high-end spec. I think they're going to try to keep price point more manageable, and I think that is something that we will see, that they're not going to go extremely crazy on the, try to be the be all end all. First of all, because I don't think it's necessarily needed anymore. We were hoping that the Series X and PS5 Pro and all these other consoles, that 4K 60 frames per second was going to be the absolute minimum. And so you can hit that now for fewer dollars, if you will, than you could when the X came out and the Series S came out. So I think that will be their target. It's like, look, every game is going to be guaranteed 4K 60 FPS. This is the hardware that will allow them to do that, and that's what we're going to be selling. Let's see. So Sumo says, first time asking. Thanks for first time answering your question. Happy to have you here. Hope all is good. Hope all is good as you. So I was wondering if Xbox is serious about gaming everywhere thing. Shouldn't they at least aim to offer real value compared to Steam? Granted, Steam only works on PC, but it works on Mac and Linux and the like. I'm not sure Xbox does all that. So Xbox does in some capacity. So you got to remember, like Minecraft is a good example. When Microsoft says gaming everywhere, what they mean by that especially is on the cloud side, right? You can, anything that has a browser, so on Mac, it would work. You can play these games anywhere, and PC, and now in the car. So they are definitely serious. I do not see Linux becoming a priority endpoint unless it's some like bespoke handheld experience or something like that, just because it's Microsoft and their Windows. And so doing a Linux gaming platform would be really weird. And the reason why I don't think they'd ever do that, because if they were going to do that, they would have started many years ago, and the console itself, the Xbox console, would have been running on a version of Linux rather than Windows. But I definitely think they're serious about it. And I think we're going to see more store features pushing towards that, which I think Roblox just showed back up in the store, which has my brain like really churning around. It's like, okay, is Microsoft really going to make like part of my brain like really wonders if the next gen Xbox is just going to be buying your games, if you will, through the Xbox store, not through like through the Microsoft store. I apologize, crossing wires there, but like, is that where things are just going to be transacted? We'll see. Sydney 2K says, do you know if there are any end-of-life parties for Microsoft Windows operating system at Microsoft? No. Well, Windows 10 is sunsetting here in just a few weeks at this point. I'm sure somebody might pour something out, but no, it's not. It's not the end of like a Windows era or anything else like that. Well, Windows 10 certainly has its loyal fans. The fact that they're supporting it longer term, I don't think there's going to be any parties unless they launch like a Windows 12 or something like that. Efronic says, any plans to do Warzone live streams? Not currently. I've been playing Helldivers so much, I haven't jumped into Warzone. I'll tell you what does have me interested, like Battlefield. There's been a lot of Battlefield Royale leaks. I'm super interested to see how those mechanics play out. So we'll see what happens there. DH says, do you think Xbox purposely destroyed their brand so they could be quietly buy up studios? No. No, that's a nice conspiracy theory, but that's not how business works. And that's not how Microsoft works. Now, if they accidentally do things, sure. But yeah. Studio says, if I buy GTA 6 or First Light 007 Bond game for my Series X, will I be able to play it natively on the next Xbox? The answer is probably. but we don't know. We don't know that. We don't know enough about the next gen consoles to really understand if that will be true or not. And it says, Danny, with the last question of the week, he says, do you think we'll ever see Steam come to Xbox? Well, you can already surface Steam games. I don't think you're going to see like native Steam on Xbox, but through the Xbox browser, obviously, or, app, if you want to call it that, you can see like Steam games, but you got to understand, I don't think Microsoft wants to give up the store. That's why just a few minutes ago I was like, hey, wonder if next gen Xbox, you actually buy your games through the store. The reason for that is it would translate nicely. So when you open up your mobile phone that has an Xbox app on it and you can play your games, it's all just one store, one unified experience is what Microsoft is chasing. And by allowing you, and not even allowing you, but like making Steam the priority, that really doesn't align with their narratives of what it seems like they are trying to chase. So great questions. I mean, I love them. So that wraps it up for this week, friends. Hopefully all of you had a wonderful week, and we'll catch all of you right back here next time, because the only BS on this podcast is me.